The Gloriana set by ThebeMoon. Chapter 56. Badger Power. Hermione expected Ginny to immediately launch into a description of her weekend with Blaise, but her roommate was silent as they left Hogsmeade's main street and began walking the path toward Hogwarts. He was happy enough not to talk. Gave Hermione ample time to scold herself for handling Ron in such a ham-handed fashion. Not that there was any excuse for the whole kidnapping and Death Eater whole thing. Ron's goal, she was sure, wasn't to trap her with him, with all the dark designs he'd ascribed to Draco. Rather, he just wanted to keep her safe. Hermione sighed as she followed Ginny along on the cold, windswept road. Draco was right. She had no subtlety. She had spent more time thinking about Harry's feeling than she had about Ron's. Ron was the one who needed special breakfast and witnesses and reference letters. He was the one who saw the first woman he'd love move on to a man he most hated. Ron had deserved to be treated with more care. Still, that didn't justify trapping her at the Burrow like a princess in a tower. Hermione shuddered at the spectre of Draco turning up at the Weasleys at his most autocratic, demanding her instant release. After insulting everybody and throwing curses, he would have probably searched the house and broken into Ron's bedroom. Ron's bedroom, and— "Look, Hermione," Ginny said, slowing down. "The match is over." He pushed back the hood of her green velvet cloak. "Already?" They were in front of the castle now, and students were swarming off the pitch too far away to see house colours. Many were shrieking with happiness, excitedly hopping around the grounds with a complete lack of dignity. Most unusual for Slytherins. "Malfoy must have caught the snitch already," Ginny said. "I'm not sure," Hermione said. A pack of tiny first-years was barreling toward them, black and yellow scarves flapping wildly. The boy in front was Percival, holding a large badger banner. Hermione gasped. All the squeaky mice had bright yellow hands and faces, except the girl in the back, who was green.
"Miss Granger! It's Miss Granger! Miss Granger, you missed it! You should have seen it!"
"What happened?" Hermione asked. She couldn't help but smile at the squeaky mice, who broke off from the rest of the pack to talk to her. They were so thrilled their chubby faces flushed. Lila was with them in her green and silver scarf, rolling her eyes.
"He caught it in the 5 first minutes. It was a great catch,"
Percival said, stopping to push his banner's pole into the grass.
He just snatched it right up."
"Please," Lila said.
"The snitch buzzed around his head and hovered in front of his chest. It practically fell in his lap." "You just bit her," Imogen said. "It was a brilliant catch." "Badger power,"
Percival shouted, and the others took up the cheer.
"Badger power."
"Wait a minute," Ginny said. "Are you lot saying that the Hufflepuff Seeker caught the snitch in the first 5 minutes?" All the squeaky mice nodded.
"Billy Froom, the Hufflepuff Seeker." "That's right, Miss Weasley,"
said Bertie. Cupcake was on his shoulder, wearing a tiny yellow scarf. Bertie started jumping around, pretending to ride a broom.
"Billy went like this, and then the snitch went like that, and then Billy went like this." "There wasn't anything Mr. Malfoy could do,"
Lila explained.
"Mr. Froom dropped the glove, and he was hovering down near the pitch looking for it, and Mr. Malfoy was high above the hoops. The snitch flew right at Mr. Froom's face, and he still almost missed it." "You're just a sore loser,"
Percival yelled.
"Badger power! Badger power!"
shouted all the mice except for Lila.
"I like the yellow colouring,"
said Ginny, who had been inspecting the children more closely.
"How did you do it?" "It was Miss Granger." "That was brilliant. Thank you, Miss Granger."
Ginny turned to Hermione.
"You turned them all yellow." "We're not all yellow,"
Lila said. "It's a rainbow hex." Hermione looked at the children sternly. "You lot were trying to break into the potions lab again."
"You and Mr. Malfoy spent a lot of time there," Imogen said. "We wanted to know what you were doing." "I told you what they were doing. You pig, Percival."
Ginny burst out laughing.
"Yes, Hermione."
She choked. "What do you and Malfoy get up to in that little potions lab?" It took all of Hermione's self-control not to blush, terribly desperate. Instead, she glared at all of them. "We are brewing a complicated and dangerous experimental potion," she said in her best McGonagall voice, "for a very serious purpose. If any of you disturbed it, you could have wiped out months of work and suffered severe injuries."
"So you turned them all yellow?" Ginny asked.
Lila opened her mouth.
"And green?"
Hermione frowned. "No, they should all be different colours."
"We were," Bertie cried. "I was purple, Percival was red, and the Magian was—" "We get it," Ginny said, grinning. "It was Lila's idea, actually,"
Percival said, giving little Slytherin a reluctant nod of approval.
"It was brilliant. She goes into the dungeons with an echo spell."
"Hello, Aura," Lila and Hermione corrected.
"I researched the rainbow hacks," Layla went on, "and discovered that the colours change every time you— So we went back to the lab and kept hitting the door and changing colours until we were yellow," Imogen yelled. "Or green," Lila said.
A crowd of older Hufflepuffs ran by, waving more black and yellow banners.
"Party in the Badger Comet Room,"
cried Justin Finch Fletchley.
"Badger power," the mice yelled. "Party!" "My Miss Granger, Miss Weasley." "Come on, you too, Lila." "I hope we get biscuits." "Badger biscuits?" "Lemon badger biscuits." "Badger power."
The mice ran off to the castle, screaming at the top of their lungs. Ginny was still laughing.
"Brilliant," she gasped. "I can see why you and Malfoy adopted them."
"They like him much better," Hermione said sourly.
"Well, they seem to like you too."
The mice had put Ginny in a cheerful mood again, and she linked her arm around Hermione's.
"Come on, I want to hear about your weekend."
"I want to hear about yours," Hermione answered quickly, allowing herself to be towed along. "The Italian Riviera." Ginny bit her lip, and her bright face dimmed slightly.
"Yes."
Hermione gave her a quick hug. "Tell you what," she said. "Ron gave me flying lessons this morning before he went mental. How about we fly to this great place I found hiking with Hagrid?"
"Really?"
Ginny's eyes lit up.
"You'll fly with me today?"
Hermione nodded. Really, with all her own drama, she'd been a bit of a rubbish friend. "Just not too high, okay? Or too fast."
"Great!"
Ginny smiled.
"I'll meet you in the entrance hall. You can ride my spare broom."
She clapped her wide sun hat on her head and ran towards the castle as quickly as the stiletto sandals would allow. Hermione pushed upstream against the crowd, passing happy Hufflepuffs and Gryffindors as well as South Slytherins. The Slytherin team was still on the pitch, getting reamed out by Astoria, but Draco was not among them. So she jogged back to the castle, wondering if she'd have to brave the Slytherin dungeons to find him. "I can't just fly off with Ginny without a word," she thought, passing through the castle's giant oak doors into the entrance hall and pulling off her cloak. "He's probably annoyed I missed the match when he finds out about Ron." A subtle clearing of the throat, not unlike Umbridge, stopped her in the centre of the entrance hall. Hermione turned to see Draco leaning against the house hourglass cabinet, still in his Quidditch gear with his broom propped up beside him. His arms were crossed and his hair still ruffled from the match. Hermione's breath caught. He had no right to look like that, all scowly and irresistible. "Looking for someone?" Draco asked coolly. "I am, actually," he answered, walking across the hall toward him. "I have a boyfriend around here somewhere, a snarky git who can't catch a snitch. Have you seen him?" "Likely hiding from you if he's smart," Draco said. "Oh, he's anything but smart," she answered. She dropped her cloak and reached up to frame his face with her hands, and if the touch of her cold fingers startled him, he didn't show. His gloved fingers wrapped around her wrists. "Can I assume the weasel?" "Yes, Ron knows about us," Hermione said. "Does he ever?" "Excellent." Pulled her into a quick, hard kiss, then gently pushed her back again, hands still on her wrists. They might be public now, but that didn't mean they could be snogging in the entrance hall. She craned her neck to look behind him, noting a decided lack of emeralds in the Slytherin hourglass, and clicked her tongue. Draco's jaw tightened. "My, your house has had some bad luck," she said. "Dirty tactics," he growled. Hermione smiled brightly. "I agree. Students shouldn't be sneaking in to drop more jewels." Draco glanced around the hall, then back at her, sliding his hand off her wrist to capture her hands and pulling her closer. "Lift the enchantment, Hermione," he whispered. "I'll make it worth your while."
"Stop cheating,"
she whispered back. His head dipped closer. "This is your final warning." "No, your worst." "I will." He released her and pulled out his wand, holding it by his side and giving it a lazy wave. Immediately a cascade of rubies tumbled into the lower bulb of the Gryffindor hourglass.
"Draco!"
he hissed, horrified.
"Stop it!"
"Lift the enchantment," he repeated as rubies continued to fall. Hermione groaned. She couldn't lift the spell off the Gryffindor hourglass without clearing the Slytherin one, since the hourglasses were all connected. She glared at Draco and gave her own wand a quick pass, muttering the spell too low for him to hear. Draco leaned against the hourglass's gilded cabinet, looking smug. "Don't worry, I'll still make it worth your while." "You'd better," Hermione said in a surly tone she didn't really feel. Draco must have added 30 rubies to the Gryffindor glass, and they were now there to stay. Draco began slowly stripping off his leather gloves, his eyes on hers. Hermione swallowed and looked away. "I'm sorry I missed the match," she said. "It was probably for the best." Draco tucked the gloves into his cloak. "What happened?" "When?" Hermione asked, stalling. "With the weasel. He made you late, didn't he?" "Yes," she admitted. "Before I tell you, I just want to say that it was partly my fault. I handled it badly." Draco crossed his arms. "What did he do?" "And keep in mind what an enormous git you've been in every interaction you've ever had with Ron in your entire life," she said. His eyes hardened. "You're not answering my question." Hermione clenched her hands together to keep from wringing them and looked around the hall. Students glanced over at them curiously as they passed through the doors and moved up and down the marble staircase. "And keep in mind that Ron is just as protective as you are," she continued. "And if there's something I don't need, it's a pair of hair-trigger lunatics thinking they know—" "Granger," Draco said dangerously. Hermione straightened her spine and looked him in the eye. Acting neurotic wasn't helping the situation. "I told Ron about us, and he decided you'd cast a spell or fed me a potion, which, if you think about it, is a perfectly reasonable assumption, considering how you've consistently—" "What did he do?" Draco asked again. She sighed. "He took me to the Burrow for safekeeping and cast a spell to keep me there." "He trapped you?" His eyes were cold. "He tried to keep you from me?" "Yes, but I still had my wand," she said, "so I petrified him." "Of course you did," Draco said, beginning to smile, then stopped. "He didn't try to." "No, honestly, no," Hermione said. "He just kept ranting about—" She trailed off. She didn't want to tell him. But hiding things from Draco to protect his delicate sensibilities would hurt them both. She hardened her voice. "Draco, I want to be honest with you. I really do. But if you go spare and turn up at the Burrow flinging curses, I will want a conversation about what we're doing here. Do you understand?" He gave an irritated look. "Of course I do," he said. His tone implied she was mad to think he'd do anything at all impulsive or misguided. "You'd better," Hermione said, not the least bit convinced. "Ron called me a Death Eater whore, and I—" "Draco, what are you doing? Expelliarmus!" Draco had leaped away from the hourglass cabinet, but now his wand was in Hermione's hand, which she pointed straight at him. "Give me my wand back," he growled. "I'll show you that." "You can't just—" Hermione's hand suddenly turned icy cold, and she dropped Draco's wand, which clattered to the stone floor. "How dare you!" She pulled her own wand out, furious. "Pet—" A sharp crack sounded above, and a stone block fell from the hall ceiling above them, shattering the glass cabinet and knocking over the Gryffindor hourglass. Draco pushed her out of the way as the block crashed to the floor. They stared at the cracked stone in horror, then at each other. "Did you—" "No," he cried. "You're the one holding a wand."
"Are you two dueling?"
asked a voice from above. Draco and Hermione looked up to see Ginny descending the marble staircase, holding 2 brooms. She wore Quidditch leathers and a long-sleeved black shirt, and her hair was still piled in its glamorous Italian Riviera style.
"Is this foreplay?"
Ginny asked brightly. "It looks like you're losing, Draco, but maybe you like that." "Ginevra," he said with crystal politeness. We're just having a little discussion, so if you will excuse."
"A discussion?"
Ginny rolled her eyes and looked around the entrance hall. Students stood frozen, staring terrified with wide eyes at the three of them, the shattered cabinet and the chunk of stone on the floor. Hermione looked down at the wand in her hand and almost groaned. Great. Now half the school would think she tried to kill Draco. This wouldn't do her violent reputation any good.
"You're talking about Ron, aren't you?"
Ginny went on, clearly determined to keep the drama going. "Ginny?"
"How much have you told him, Hermione?"
Ginny's eyes were dancing.
"Have you gotten to the part where yours truly saved the day?"
"You were there?" Draco asked.
"Oh, yes," Ginny said happily. "So was Harry. Poor Harry, trying so hard to be masterful and utterly failing."
"I fail to see the humour, Ginevra," Draco said. He stepped towards her, every inch the disapproving Slytherin prince. "Your wretched brother insulted her, entrapped her, and vowed to keep her from me." His voice was rising, and his wand was back in his hand now. "Draco," Hermione said, "be reasonable. You can't just go to the burrow and door." "I can take the weasel," he sneered. "It's not Ron you'd have to worry about," Hermione said, trading a smile with Ginny. "It's Molly." He hesitated. "Remember Molly?" Hermione went on. "The witch who killed Bellatrix? She knows what Ron did, and he'll likely be washing dishes for a week and only let out of his bedroom to go to the joke shop." Draco glanced at Ginny, who nodded cheerfully. "I wouldn't care to do a Mrs. Weasley," he allowed.
"Of course you wouldn't,"
Ginny said briskly.
"Come on, Hermione, say goodbye to his lordship. We're losing light."
"We're going out to Flybit," Hermione told Draco. "Excellent," he said dryly. "I recommend the Forbidden Forest so you can return with yet another tale of an attempted kidnapping, just to round out the weekend." "We're actually headed that way," Hermione said. "I'm showing her one of Hagrid's favorite places." "You are not," Draco began.
"Another tale?"
Ginny asked curiously.
"What is going on here?"
asked a booming voice. Slughorn appeared beside them, mopping his sweaty forehead with a green silk handkerchief. He stared down at the cleaved stone block and around at the still horrified students.
"That crash rattled the dungeons while I was brewing a very tricky—"
"The stone came loose, Professor," Draco said in a bored tone. "Apparently Rhapsody is only effective in binding spoons and idiot students."
"Now, don't be impertinent, Mr. Malfoy,"
Slughorn said, wagging a finger.
"Make yourself useful and run along to Professor Hagrid. He's on the second floor helping repair the east wing."
Slughorn looked up.
"Shoddy repair work. We'll need all those blocks inspected again."
Draco glowered, not moving an inch. Hermione stepped up to him and touched his wrist. "I need to talk to Ginny about Blaze," she whispered. "The weekend didn't end well." He nodded, but still looked disgruntled, giving Hermione a final warning look before stalking off in search of Hagrid.
"I must admit, Miss Granger, I'm disappointed,"
Slughorn said, chins wobbling as he shook his head.
"I had hoped you'd be more of a calming influence on Mr. Malfoy."
To be continued. Next up, Ginny's weekend. Thank you for listening to this chapter of the Gloriana set by ThebeMoon. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or AO3.